What's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I'm going to be joined by the one and the only Jacob Martin to talk about an old Western comedy from 1979 starring Kirk Douglas and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's The Villain. The Villain is about, well, a villain in the Old West that is tasked on tracking down and stealing a suitcase full of cold, hard cash from a young woman who is being escorted by a handsome stranger. So, first and foremost, big thanks and shout out to Jacob for joining me on this review. I left a link to his channel in my description box down below, so don't forget to check out his channel after this review. You know, he's got a lot of fantastic and consistent content over there, and you can also find a series of reviews that I'm doing with him right now covering the Pink Panther film series starring Peter Sellers. But we'll be hearing his thoughts on The Villain in just a hot second! But first, I wanted to talk about some of my positives here. So I actually have a lot of history with this movie. It was one of the, random movies that my mom had taped on VHS back in the day, and every once in a while, we'd pop it on because, in a lot of ways, it worked for the entire family. But also, if you aren't aware of what this movie even is, it's essentially a live-action cartoon specifically inspired by Wile E Coyote and the Roadrunner cartoons. And it makes no qualms with making that known, as Kirk Douglas plays this bumbling villain on this cat-and-mouse chase to get to this suitcase full of money. And his plans are complete with TNT, big boulders that fall on him instead of the victims. There's scenes where he's initially holding on to something, and then when that snaps, he takes a quick look at the camera before he falls to the ground. You're even talking about scenes where he's painting a fake tunnel on the side of a mountain in which handsome stranger and the lady just travel straight through. It's totally the Coyote and the Roadrunner. There's no way around it, and when I grew up, that was so cool and so funny, and I definitely had a lot of nostalgia centered around this thing. Not only that, but my elementary school's mascot was the Roadrunner. I guess that's just kind of a random factoid. Enjoy. Now, I think there's a lot going on in this film that's worth the watch if you've never seen it, especially if you like live-action cartoon films, because in the 70s, they were kind of non-existent. I mean, this was nearly 30 years before Space Jam, for instance. And beyond that, there's some really interesting aspects to pay attention to, like the soundtrack of the film, which has these catchy tunes playing that also kind of serve as narration in a way, because the handsome stranger has a theme song. The Villain also has a theme song, and so does Charmy, who is the lady in the film. She also has a theme song, and each verse of these songs kind of breaks down what's been going on in the movie in a way, and I thought that was clever, on top of being a fun little ditty. Also, this is the first and last Western that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever played in. And this was way, way early on in his career, so that's pretty interesting to see as well. Now, before I head over to my negatives, I want to hear what Jacob has to say about The Villain. Take it away, man.
Dave, what's going on? And to all the viewers of Dave's YouTube channel, it's great to be a part of your channel once again. And today, you've asked me to collab on the movie The Villain, a comedy that I had never heard of, and you approached me to review this movie on your channel. This was released in 1979. This movie was from director Hal Needham, a director I'm familiar with who directed films like Smokey and the Bandit, which I greatly love, and The Cannonball Run, which is kind of a fun movie. It's not one of my favorites, but it has some enjoyable moments. I'm pretty sure Dave has already summarized the plot of The Villain, but The Villain is essentially an extended live-action cartoon. I guess one of the reasons Dave wanted me to collab on his channel talking about a movie like this is because I'm currently reviewing the Pink Panther films over on my channel with Dave, and a lot of those films have live-action cartoonish elements in there, especially the Pink Panther Strikes Again, which was our most recent collab, which was an insane blast to watch. The Villain took a lot of influences from the classic Roadrunner cartoons, especially, where it's this one extended chase between one group and another, and there's a lot of comic hijinks. And our foil character in this case, our villainous character, Cactus Jack, played by Kurt Russell, who's essentially Wile E Coyote in this movie, always gets his butt whooped because he's trying to rob some money from Anne Margaret's character, and it always backfires. Arnold Schwarzenegger is also in this movie as well as like the protector of everything who's guarding Anne Margaret's money. This movie, I was kind of let down by this movie, unfortunately, because you hear the setup of this movie. You have this comedy inspired by Looney Tunes. It's from the director of Smokey and the Bandit. It's got great talent involved, like Kurt Russell, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Margaret. You think this would be a blast, right? I mean, there are, I guess, some enjoyable aspects of this movie. I mean, it's well shot. There's a couple catchy songs thrown in there. There's occasional moments where I kind of chuckled at some of the slapstick comedy, especially like the camaraderie between Kurt Russell and his horse. There was a couple funny aspects related to that.
Whiskey. Not you.
But this movie just did not work at the end of the day. I think they were trying way too hard to copy and paste what Chuck Jones did so well back in the day with the Looney Tunes cartoons, that he forgot to tell a good story along with the comical hijinks, because I didn't care about any of these characters. Kurt Douglas tried way too hard and his character got more annoying as it went along. And Margaret's just your typical sex symbol type character. She's beautiful to look at, yes, but I just didn't care. Arnold Schwarzenegger felt the most out of place in this movie. This was him pre-Terminator, and I honestly felt like his character was useless. Like, the movie didn't really need him. It just could have been Kirk Douglas and Margaret, and the film would have been just fine. And then the comedy just didn't really work for me. The slapstick just got old and repetitive. It's a 90-minute film, so you think it would breeze right on by. But it's the same type of jokes and comedy that happens throughout this entire film. Kirk Douglas wants to rob a coach that Anne Margaret's driving. Everything that he does fails. Every attempt backfires. Slapstick shenanigans happen, and the movie just goes along and repeats the same thing over and over and over again. And that didn't do anything to advance the plot. It's just repetitive jokes that just made the film boring, uninteresting, and uninspiring. This is a movie that really disappointed me by the end of the day. There's a lot of ingredients in this film that could have made for an entertaining watch, and comedy is a very subjective genre, so if you want to see like an extended Roadrunner cartoon in live action, and you think that would entertain you for 90 minutes, then this might work for you. Which is weird, because you think I would enjoy this because I love Looney Tunes and I love the Roadrunner cartoons. They're a lot of fun. But for me, the extension to a 90-minute film just didn't work when I didn't find the characters interesting. I felt like the talent was wasted. And a lot of the slapstick I thought was painfully unfunny. I think the director and the writers tried way too hard to replicate what they did so well in the Roadrunner shorts, and it just fell flat on its face. So this is a movie that I didn't get into, unfortunately, at the end of the day. There's a couple good filmmaking aspects I like, a couple of funny moments sprinkled in there, but overall, I felt like this movie was an absolute waste, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, I'm only going to give The Villain a 1.5 out of 5 stars. And on my 100-point scale, it's getting a 29 out of 100. So thank you, Dave, for allowing me to be a part of this video. I wasn't a big fan of The Villain, but I hope you get a little more out of this movie. I don't know what your thoughts are as I'm filming this video, but I'm excited to hear what you think of the film, whether you enjoyed it more than I did or you were disappointed as I was. I'm sure Dave will leave a link in the description below where you can check out my YouTube channel. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, and other fun stuff along the way. I'm doing a lot of collabs with Dave over on my channel where we're reviewing all the Pink Panther films. So if you want to check those out, I'm sure Dave will leave the link in the description below where you can check out my YouTube channel, which has all our Pink Panther collab videos. Dave, I won't hog up any more of your time, so back to your thoughts on The Villain.
Thank you once again to Jacob for joining me in this video. Once again, you can find a link to his channel in my description box down below. Go give him some love and tell him that I sent ya. Yeah, man, I think overall I definitely enjoyed it more than you, but most of that enjoyment comes down to my nostalgia growing up with it. I fully understand and even agree with some of your qualms, especially the repetitive nature of the film. And you're right. If I were to make a deconstructing the narrative video on this movie, I would definitely have some problems with that because there is no end in sight. It's one of those films where they could literally keep doing what they're doing over and over and over again, and the movie could theoretically end up being 10 hours long, with gag after gag after gag, because that's what it is, and it's not really going anywhere. After each gag, the villain isn't discovering some new way to approach the situation, He's not learning from his mistakes or growing. It literally is the same thing over and over again, which is how the Roadrunner cartoons work. But being translated to live action isn't as easy as that, and it has no anchoring aspect that would make audiences care that much about the characters and even bore them with these gags. I definitely fully get that, and I 100% agree with you, Jacob. There needed to be some kind of development for the characters, for the story, for something. And because there isn't, it's one of those comedies that doesn't really have much of a point. Instead, I feel like this film is composed of scenes that you can take out of the movie and upload them one by one to YouTube or something, and there you go, a live-action version of the Roadrunner cartoon shorts. It doesn't really matter what he's doing or why he's doing it. It only really matters about the outcome, which is usually that bonkers, over-the-top failure that is equatable to Wile E Coyote's own failures. So that's actually a major issue. Let's go ahead and break down my final score, though. From an unbiased technical perspective, for a film that came out in the late 70s, I actually think it was put together rather well, especially in the production design, wardrobe, filming locations, and music choices. All that. But at the end of the day, it does have a weak story that doesn't really amount to much. And I personally found the ending of the movie to be a cop-out because the writer had no idea on how to properly end it. This unbiased score is 66%. My biased score is exactly the same, and that's because as a comedy, it sometimes hits the right chords, but sometimes just doesn't. Kind of like you said, Jacob, Arnold Schwarzenegger, his existence in this film really is kind of pointless. I like him as an actor, and I remember enjoying his character here, but if anything, he's an over-the-top, satirical, metaphorical example of a woman needing a male to help her carry out a mission. And I feel like that's one way to look at it, but this guy could have been played by anybody or nobody at all. This score is also 66%, which means when you combine the two scores together, you obviously come out to the final rating of 66 out of 100 possible stars, or a C+ letter grade. I don't think it's horrible. And Jacob, your score of 29 is pretty rough, but I get it. Comedy is definitely subjective. One, it's definitely aged. Two, the story really isn't there, and I do understand where you're coming from. Maybe it's all about nostalgia for me, I don't know. But what about you guys, though? Have you seen this classic Western comedy? If you have, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie.